Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Chasing Me podcast.
Hi, welcome back.
We are so happy to have you. And this week, we want to talk about vulnerability.
Scary. Very scary.
Are you ready to be vulnerable, Erica?
I'm going to do my best.
Okay. So will I. Let's start off with, I guess, what is vulnerability? What does it mean to you?
So, vulnerability means to me, it took me a while actually to get to kind of this answer, but in a nutshell for me, it's being able to navigate your life in like the most true and authentic self, your true and most authentic self, without reservations or, without reservations of being judged or, criticized for maybe who you are at your core.
I think that's a very solid explanation. I don't have anything more to add other than a quote that I found from Brené Brown. Apologies. And it's vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome.
Yeah, I love that quote. And I love that you said, so Brené she did a TED Talk on vulnerability, and we can link it down below, but I absolutely love it as well because she herself as a researcher, like challenged herself and realized that she wasn't being vulnerable, and she ended up having to like go to a therapist and like work all of her stuff out as well. So she stopped her research like midway to discover vulnerability herself as she was kind of in the realm of that topic. And it was really insightful when you can be researching and feel like you know something so well, but be blind to it all at the same time. So we'll link it below. But yeah, it was a really good TED Talk if you want to watch it. So
I love that. And I think that, having no control, which is what she said in that quote, is really what it is. That's what it feels like when you are being vulnerable. You don't have control over the conversation that you're having with that person anymore. You're really putting yourself in their hands.
I think you don't have control over the outcome. You don't have control over how they respond is what the scary thing to me is the scary thing is I don't know how you're going to take what I'm about to say.
That's true.
About myself. Like you could be like, oh yeah, I feel the same way. High five. Like I'm glad you were vulnerable with me. Now we can meet halfway and like we can connect on a deeper level for that. Sometimes it doesn't go that way. They're just like, you're weird. And they run away.
I don't know if that's ever happened to me though. Has that actually ever happened to you?
I mean, I probably thought it did in my mind. They probably just like, they give you that look. They're like, okay. And then they walk away.
Unspoken.
Yeah, they'll actually run away.
Got it. Okay. Well, why do you think it's important to be vulnerable?
I think it's important to be vulnerable because of that connection that I feel like you can miss with, say, your friends or your family members or a significant other. It allows you like true, deep connections. And I think sometimes it can be so surface level if you don't really kind of be vulnerable. A lot of friendships and stuff can be surface level.
Yeah. And I also think it just won't allow you to grow and be confident in maybe who your authentic self is. Because if you're only showing people a part of you, how can you really know that that is like you at the end of the day? You're not doing any mindfulness journey around your perspective.
Yeah. And I think also that goes into it. Yeah, you just can't be your authentic self as much as you might want to be. And do your friends, partner, family, like truly know you and that beautiful side of you that exists that you might just be too scared to show people?
I think that we're being very vulnerable to all of you, which is why I love this podcast, is because it is making me more vulnerable. Every time that I watch it back and edit it, I'm always so intrigued by the fact that like the way my mannerisms are, how I react to certain words, like
It's scary to watch these back. It really is.
I think it's insightful. I've learned
Yes.
so much and I feel more confident actually with
Yeah.
myself and presenting myself to other people since we've done it and posted it. Mm-hmm. I think part of being vulnerable is gaining that confidence that will really allow you to like shine and just people can see it. People can see that you are more you than you realize that you weren't showing them.
Yeah. One of our friends, Nikki, she actually texted us a couple of days ago. She's like, you'll never believe what I did. I watched all 7 or I listened to all 7 episodes, which is what has already been aired. And she's like, I felt like I was experiencing you gals for the first time over again. I was like, that's fair. And that's us being vulnerable. It's weird to think that this is probably the most, it's weird to think that this actually isn't that scary. Now that we're doing it, it really doesn't feel that scary because I know we don't have anybody sitting in front of us. It's all digital. But the idea of it is scarier than the actually like doing it.
Yeah.
And I love this. And I think this is a great topic. So
I think so too. I think that, there are a lot of misconceptions and or risks that can be taken when you think about vulnerability. For me personally, I think it definitely comes down to your overall, like when you are being vulnerable, overall people think that you're weak. Mm-hmm. And I think that's always hard to take is like, you always want to present yourself as this strong individual, somebody that like knows everything and that you're never going to be wrong. And when you are vulnerable, there is that chance of being wrong. And there is that chance that people aren't going to see eye to eye and you have to defend yourself and be confident within that, whatever defense it is. And even if you are wrong, learn to admit that you are and learn to be okay and be humbled by the experience. That's a part of like the risks and maybe misconceptions for me, but I'm so curious, what is some of those for you?
obviously I could mimic that same thing. Risk is you don't know how people will respond to what you're about to say or do. And sometimes even when you think you know them, they respond in a way that is new, and that's a learning experience for you. I think another kind of misconception is that it's like, oh, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna, it's gonna be the end of the world. Like, I can't believe I would ever do that. Like, no, that lasts for like a second or two. And then once it's gone, you realize most people's, again, like Alex said earlier, it's like, has anybody reacted that way? Most times it's like 80% positive. It's just only those like couple times where you didn't really get the response that you thought you were going to get on like maybe an aggressive level or something a little bit more hurtful. Unfortunately, the 20% is the things that stick with you and will create this like, oh, I'm never doing that again feeling. But most of the time it's not going to be the end of the world. Will you be able to move on past this? Yes, you will. So
yeah, I think it's so important to overcome the misconceptions and the risks because at least for me, I think that I have really allowed myself to be vulnerable in the sense of by being a good manager, I need to give critiques, which are negative, like it's a negative feedback to somebody. Yeah. And to me, that's being vulnerable. I want to please a lot of people a lot of the time. But by allowing myself to be a better manager for them to grow in their career, I've now established this confidence within myself to be like, oh, it's okay. Like my fear of how they're going to react isn't actually as bad as how they take it. And then also like what they do with it. Mm-hmm. They're not going to go and be like, well, I quit or, oh, well, yeah, I need to do this. It's not so extreme. And I think that's why it's so important to overcome your vulnerability misconceptions and really just allow yourself to like take action. Try it once. It will always get better the more you try, right? Like the more what is it? Like the more odds, like the odds are in your favor if you try more.
Yeah, if you keep doing it, like eventually you will get better. Like if it's like public speaking, like you're traumatized the first time, the more you do it, the easier it gets. The more maybe educated about the topic you are, the easier it gets. You feel comfortable. Like, yeah, when you do something for the first time, it's always going to be scary.
Yeah.
Always.
And then I think, it really just establishes and it creates that life that you want. Mm-hmm. And for me, creating a life and my why and my purpose and the whole goal, I'm going to have to be vulnerable. You're going to have to like sell yourself to a lot of people. That's what we do here. I mean, relatively. I don't know if we really do it a lot, but
sell ourselves here?
Yeah.
On the podcast?
Yes. For them to listen to us. No, you don't agree.
I mean, we're not actively selling ourselves.
At the end.
Oh, I guess that's fair. Link here. Buy, like, we don't have anything. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Okay, I'm selling you. She's not. I want you here.
I'm just here for the therapy session, so.
Please stay.
We
want you to create a life that you want to live by being vulnerable. So stay, follow, subscribe, all of the things.
Selling.
I don't mind doing that, which is what's so funny. But you do need to be vulnerable in your life. I remember, real quick, side story, I remember my first job was at Nordstrom. And I had to, approach customers. I had to sell. Little baby 16-year-old Alex had no idea what she was doing. She was very scared to walk up to people. But I think it's like a beautiful experience because like I became so accustomed to just being like, hi, how can I help you? And like in certain environments, I'm really good at it. Now I just need to take that into my everyday life, and really be like, oh, it's just like selling.
Yeah. It's presenting, the most, beautiful thing about that pair of shoes and being like, yeah, if you can sell shoes to someone, you can sell anything to someone. Or they say like, if you can sell a pen to someone, like you're good.
It's true.
It's such a skill. It's a very good skill to have. So
that creates the life that you want. So tell me, Erica, what vulnerabilities do you think will help you create that life that you want?
Mine is the connections. Like I really want to lean into the positive side of vulnerability because usually there's two sides of vulnerability. The negative side, which is when people think vulnerability, that's the only thing that they think about. But there is a positive side, and my hunch is that the positive side outweighs the negative side. Like you said, 10 to 1. Like once you keep doing it, you get used to it. The positive side out of it is you can find more love and belonging with your friends and connections, and it makes life so much more exciting. And I feel like I need to go into an example of recently how I've been vulnerable, which I mean, to me, to you, actually, it might sound crazy and ridiculous, but to me, it was like so thrilling and exciting, but nerve-wracking all at the same time. So as you know, I moved into my new place at the beginning of the year, and I finally got around to framing one of my friends' art pieces. And it's pretty big, and I had reached out to a local gallery to, give me suggestions on like where to go get it framed. And someone suggested this place down in Belmont Shore, and I go in, I get my piece framed, and the guy that was like servicing me at the counter was pretty cute. And I was like, oh, hey, just we were chatting. Obviously, he was very kind, helping me with the framing, whatever. And we get to talking, and he ends up that he actually like owns the business. And then I'm like, being a previous entrepreneur myself, or still an entrepreneur, we're doing this, selling myself. I was like, obviously I'm intrigued. I'm interested. You just got more fascinating to me. So not that other people aren't, but you just like, it's something, it's a world I know. So we started talking a little bit, and then it's been about like 3 weeks. I went back and picked up the frame. It was like completed 4 weeks later. He like helps me bring it out to my car the whole time we're chatting. And in that moment, I wanted to ask like, hey, by chance, would you want to go grab coffee or something? I didn't. I get home and I I muddle around in it my head for a while. And long story short, I got up the courage to call the art gallery, ask for this guy, and ask him as he's at work if he would like to go get coffee and exchange numbers. Obviously, he already had my number because I had an order, so they had my number. So he could have if he wanted to. But as a business owner, I was like, he's never going to cross that line and come up, and contact me. So I'm like, if I want to, I'm going to have to do it. I call him up. It took me days to do this, by the way. This wasn't like a spur of the moment thought. It took me days. My heart was racing. I called him up. And again, I was like, what's the worst that could happen? He says no. Okay, whatever. Would be kind of soul crushing, but I thought we were hitting it off a little bit. Anyways, he picks up immediately thinking I thought he was going to I'd ask for someone else. I'd be like, oh, can you pass the phone to so-and-so? No, he picks up immediately. And I was like, oh, hi. My heart is just pounding. I remember being in my living room and I literally thought the world was going to end. Like I said, I thought the world was going to end, but it didn't. I got through it. I asked if we could grab coffee and we ended up, he said, yeah, I think we could work something out. So we exchanged numbers. Well, again, I had him text me after he was done with work. And, at the end of it all, we still haven't gone out for coffee yet. It's been about a week or so now. But at the end of the day, regardless now of what happens, I feel like I've achieved or I've won. Regardless if we actually go on the coffee date or not, I actually feel so much more alive. I feel like I can conquer the world. So that's my story.
I love it. I'm so proud of her. I don't think you guys understand. This was amazing. I was so happy to hear this.
Oh, I want to say shout out to guys who still ask girls blindly. I don't say blindly out on a date, but have the courage to go up and ask a woman to go grab coffee or drinks. I applaud
1,000%.
you. I did it and I was oh my gosh, it was so terrifying. I don't think enough people do it. Like we said, they're so scared of being vulnerable that they're going to get shut down. Do it more. Don't be creepy when you do it. But
well, I actually saw this Instagram post from a different podcast person talking about it and how I think it's a celebrity, but he goes up to, if he's interested in somebody, goes up to them and is all something about would you be open? Are you single right now? And would you be open to talking to me later or something like that? They approach the conversation of are you single? And then it's great. Let me establish that foundation. Yeah. And then can I ask you out?
But that's what I had to do too. When I called him, I was like, hey, if you're not seeing anybody right now, because I'm not that person. I'm like, if you're talking to someone else, let's just not even start because it's not worth
I also think you were disrespecting him and his space for him and also giving him an opportunity to be like, oh, yes, I'm sorry, I am.
Even if it was a lie, I don't care, Cool, done.
That was your choice.
Yeah. You lost a good one.
Exactly. No, I'm so proud of you. I think that you being vulnerable in that way to better your life and part of your goal, which is, to have a family and to get married and find your connection is...
These are the things you got to do nowadays.
These are the things.
I'm kidding. You don't have to do it this way, but it makes me feel like I have control over what is now and my priority in life is, finding my partner and, starting a life and doing starting that part of my life.
Yeah. And I also think that it's different being vulnerable over an app or over something that's so online because you can be vulnerable. There is a part of it that is very hey, I have to communicate with you about my life, or if they ask vulnerable questions, right? You should be more vulnerable. But at the end of the day, I think that when you challenge yourself to do something in person with real, live, real time feedback, it just makes you a better person.
Oh, you get off easy with the apps. Like, oh yeah, I can be vulnerable by
Sometimes.
something that I wanted, like my prompt, I wanted to put something like unique or whatever. But how long did you take to write that? Did you do it after a couple of drinks? Like what? There is no instant like feedback. And I think that like, I see what you mean, but I don't think it's the same as like true in-person vulnerability.
Depends on what age you are. Because if you asked me when I first got on the apps, I would have said very different answer.
Fair. Again, you get used to it and it gets easier with time.
It's true.
Check.
Well,
Dating apps. Easy now.
That's great.
I can go have coffee with random strangers. Check.
They seem nice. They won't kill me. This is where my mind goes. It's fine. But speaking of vulnerability and relationships or personal connections, like how do you think it affects when you are in a relationship or maybe in your professional life? I think we've touched on it, but I think that there's probably some differences in there. So
I think professionally, I don't want to say, sometimes I hesitate when I say this. There is a level of professionalism that you need to keep at the workplace, but you can do it in a way that's true to yourself. You don't have to say my boss communicates a certain way. Just because he or she doesn't mean I have to. I can still communicate in my way as long as it's still professional. Like, I think that's sometimes, because there's people I feel like, I don't want to say at my current job, but yeah, kind of, where I would kind of be like, that's borderline unprofessional.
okay.
But are they just being their authentic self? And is this crossing a line or is it not? And I kind of fight myself with this like professionalism nowadays because everything is so relaxed. Probably more with like appearance at work, dress code, things like that. Not so much like atmosphere and how you communicate. I still feel like, well, some people go a little haywire. And I'm like, ooh, you shouldn't really talk like that. But it's okay.
I do think that you're right. In work, there is a sense of being vulnerable by speaking up, right? I think that everybody who does speak up and speak their opinion and or bring suggestions into the workplace, they are bringing an opportunity for people to give critiques and not just agree with you. And a part of that will play into building your confidence, also building your professional like skill level of what necessarily is being asked of you, maybe what you're suggesting, and then being able to really build on top of it. Thinking of it more of a layering blocks of understanding what people's expectations maybe are as a general baseline. And then when you are vulnerable, you move outside of it, you realize where you can and cannot step. Because everybody has such a subjective point of view, it will never be like you will never be able to please everybody, but you understand how to navigate situations when you are vulnerable better, that you can speak more eloquently when you speak to a lot of different variety of people, which is what I think is very important by being vulnerable.
Yeah. And at the workplace, that goes into a good point. You're no longer being vulnerable with like potentially one person, like a friend. You're being vulnerable and say in front of a meeting of like 35 people or 60 people if you're presenting on something that you did or bringing to light an issue that you found. And it's like, some people hesitate because they don't want to be like pointing things out. And what at that point, it's like, you're not placing blame. You're bringing light to something that's wrong. And then people start blaming each other. I've seen that in the corporate world, and especially at my job. Someone brings up an issue and it's constantly like point here, point there. And you're like, it's the lack of ownership sometimes. And I think that's just more of an insecurity on the person that is pointing blame potentially, is because they're themselves are insecure with their ability to be vulnerable and be wrong sometimes, because we're not perfect. No one is perfect.
Yeah.
You had to learn your way through failures to get there. You had to learn that skill at a certain point. So if someone's coming in, don't judge them for,
Well, I think
putting
at the end
themselves
of the
out
day,
there.
you are going to be judged. But
Yeah.
it's a matter of what is your goal? Because is your goal to be liked? Or is it to get further in your work? Or is it to get better, authentic people in your life? Or, right, like you're going to have to go through the bad to get to the good and to know the good. And I think a lot of people say that, but it's hard to know it in that moment. So having like mindfulness and awareness, being able to go through a situation and then maybe outside of that situation, reflect on it, journal about it, do whatever makes you feel more comfortable, talk to somebody about it. But at the end of the day, once you're able to reflect on it, understanding that, okay, I didn't like it, but at the end of the day, I can move past it because it's going to help me understand people's dynamics, people's expectations. Every human is the same. We all react the same due to like external factors as well. And that's what you have to really keep in mind, is that you might be talking to somebody one-on-one and their reaction towards the situation might be so dramatic, but maybe their personal life is affecting the way that they're acting to you. And you would have no idea. So I think it goes into a lot of other things. By being vulnerable, you also need to be compassionate, empathetic, understand other people's perspectives, a lot of things. But start with being vulnerable, work your way up to knowing and and how to recognize it.
Yeah. There's little baby steps of vulnerability that you can kind of take. Again, it's like when you do it once and you don't really feel bad about it, or like, okay, that wasn't so bad. Okay, let me try maybe pushing yourself a little further and a little further. And then at a certain point in the corporate world, they'll tell you when you cross the line. So then
somebody will.
Okay, take a step back. That's kind of what I'm doing right now at my job. Quickly is like over the last 2 weeks, I felt this urge to just push myself more to, like, I'm already a good employee, but I feel like I just had so much more to give. And I'm like, yeah, let's just see if I can be like on top of it and really dig down into some details and really think this through and have clear thoughts, because I've been getting sleep. Yay, Erica. And yeah, I feel good. And at a certain point, someone's either going to be like, yep, that's not, your responsibility, or yeah, thanks for pointing it out. We'll take it from here. And I'm like, good. Okay. That's my wall. I hit it. But I love it. It's made me feel really good so far. So
good. I think more people would like for people to be more passionate and take on more without really being asked. So I think you're doing great. I don't think anyone is ever going to tell you no.
That's true.
You're just going to get more work.
I'm going to get more work with more responsibilities with less of the compensation. I know how this works. Don't worry.
Okay.
I didn't even have to work that hard and they would give me more work. So that's it's called layoffs. You just suck in everything that everybody else left behind. Anyways.
The common thread through multiple podcasts.
Yeah, I know.
It's okay.
But I guess how do you feel like you're going to try to do better with vulnerability?
That's interesting. I think that for me, I would like for my vulnerability to not feel so much of like a climb and then a drop. I would like to see it even out more. I think that, like I said earlier, the more you do it, the more you're able to do it, and it not affect you so dramatically. If somebody says no or they disagree or you have to defend yourself, you can kind of like get back up quicker and it not affect you. So that would be my goal into how I would approach vulnerability moving forward. And then I think there's two sides to it. Professionally, it seems easier for me, of course. And then personally, I think that that's the hard one for me. So being vulnerable in my personal life would be more open, maybe with family, being more open with friends, not being so like reserved when it comes to my life. the things I think. Being okay to ruffle feathers, and it not be, I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea all the time, and just not being a people pleaser is going to be and has been always a very hard one for me. So things that I am conscious and mindful of, and I think I've gotten better at it, but I have a lot more room to improve.
Yeah, I love that. I love that for you.
Thanks.
Makes me happy.
By being a little meaner. Erica's like, yes, this is what we've been waiting for.
Get him, Alex. Get him. I love it. I'm fully trying to embrace some vulnerability, obviously, with my love life, putting myself out there, risking it all.
I love that for your love life.
I just want to feel emotions, good, bad, or indifferent. And like, I feel like I haven't been feeling for a long time. Because it's funny, Brene Brown actually touches on this in that TED Talk. Now that I think about it, she goes into this real quick. She goes into this a thought that like you can't numb certain emotions. You can't be selective with your emotions. So like when you are numbing, like being scared at being vulnerable at work, doing all these things, you're also numbing and all these like bad habits and whatever, negative talk, everything. You're numbing these negative emotions. You're also numbing happiness, love, joy. You're running away from them. You're running away from all of them. And I feel like it was just like, moment, because I felt like, I was like, yeah, like give me all the emotions. Like, cause I know like if I actually feel like I can navigate my emotions pretty well. Like that being vulnerable, putting myself out there, like I'm okay with getting shut down. Obviously I'm getting better over time, but I would rather have to deal with something that happened than not have it happen at all. And like, you feel nothing. You're just empty.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel empty. I want to feel passionate, love, belonging. Yeah.
We love this.
I love it too.
I love it. I think that is great. And it reminds me of when reflecting like what I think our 20s were like. If I could, like, I really think that our 20s were very much just us being ridiculous.
Freedom.
Young.
Freedom.
Newly graduated individuals that just, I wouldn't say we took more risks, but we just didn't care. I don't feel like
we lived exactly how we wanted to live.
Yeah. Or I mean, I think I cared a lot, but maybe it's just only at night I didn't care.
That's fair.
I don't really know. But regardless, I'm so happy to be vulnerable with you.
Yeah.
And be vulnerable with you guys because it has allowed me to be better and allow me to be more aware. And I think awareness for me is like my number one goal this year because it's only going to help me in my future and my goals. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing us to be vulnerable to the like 50 people who are watching these, which I'm surprised we've had that many views, but on a couple of it, I'm like 50, 60. I'm like, yeah, look at us. Anyways, thank you so much. I've loved this conversation about vulnerability, and you will continue to see us being vulnerable each and every week. So yeah, thank you so much. We will obviously be posting on YouTube, Spotify, and then on our social platforms as well.
See you guys next week.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.